Welcome to session 5 of the 7x7 video series for understanding and applying the SFS. In the previous session, we introduced the process of scoring the SFS and how it can be bridged into individual coaching. In this session, we'll begin to explore how the SFS can be used for group profiling. Let's get started. Profiling individuals can be done in many ways and in many settings. Group profiling can be a bit more challenging. In both cases, the best possible circumstances for having the full attention and willing participation of respondents is to establish a relational connection with them. If you hope respondents will find their way onto an app on their own, open an interface, and carefully answer all of the questions on the SFS so their results can be easily captured, you may be disappointed by the results. Taking the SFS by an app will not in itself have any effect on reliability or validity. But a lot fewer people than you might think will actually complete the scale that way. If you send an email to a group with a link to the SFS, you might get a few more people to complete the scale. If you're actually walking around with a tablet, say on a training range, and asking people to complete the SFS via an app right there, you'll likely get better results. And of course, if you're in your office, or in a small training room where people are completing the scale in some format, sheet or tablet or whatever, you're likely going to get your best results. This is a chance to think creatively. I've worked with a particularly innovative chaplain who will pass out completely blank sheets of copy paper to a large auditorium full of people preparing for deployment. He asks his audience to number their page from 1 to 17. And then he proceeds to ask each of the scale questions one by one and in order, that is the same order we established on the practice sheets you yourself completed in an earlier session. By asking the questions one by one, he tends to keep the attention of the crowd to a greater degree. And he's made one more creative addition to the process. He asks them to simply answer the questions that he's asking them on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 meaning strongly disagree and 10 meaning strongly agree. In fact, in an open setting like this, people have an easy time of thinking of answers on a scale of 1 to 10. As a result, by the end of the 17 questions, his audience will have a number between 1 and 10 listed for each question, assuming they decided to answer the God-related questions, an option which he informed them about verbally. And then get this. The chaplain asks everyone to get out their phones and leads them through the process of scoring their own answers. Can you think of the one extra step to scoring that they'll all need to accomplish since they're just answering on a scale of 1 to 10 instead of using the scale of 1 to 5? They'll need to divide their averages by 2 to get back to a 5-point scale. That can be compared with all of the other people who are taking the scale in different settings. Behind him on the big screen, he projects an image of that tall blue and gray column that we introduced last session containing percentile scores, and he asks his audience to find their place in the percentile groups on the big screen, and to list that on the page also in pen or pencil next to their subscale averages. So a particular deploying member may have the following recorded. For PCHP, an average of 4.5, which puts them at the 60th percentile for PCHP. For PMPV, an average of 4.0, which puts them just under the 60th percentile. For SSGG, an average of 4.5, which is just under 80%. After this, he explains the PCHP, PMPV, and SSGG subscales and identifies the properties of each of these core attributes. He asks the audience to make one more note next to each subscale score. In one sentence or less, he asks them, can they think of one way to either strengthen or maintain their commitments to each one of these 3 areas of spirituality during the upcoming deployment? Once they've written this down, he asks them to snap a picture of the sheet on their phone and pass in their sheets to be collected and inputted into a spreadsheet. This is such a great example of creativity in scale administration. Of course, he could just as easily use copies of the manual scale sheets, but what he's doing works. It keeps his audience attentive. It makes the work of scoring and comparing responses very personal and even something akin to fun. Also, he and his enlisted counterparts still have everything they need to record pre-deployment scores for post-deployment comparison. If you're interested in something like this, we've even created a custom sheet, which you can find in Section 5 of your resource book, that will allow you to put something into the hands of your own groups, which they can use to record answers to questions that you're offering to them one by one. There are also some incorporated prompts on that sheet for scoring and comparing scores. Now, This example also allows us to shift to the discussion of sequential scaling and finding and interpreting change scores. Let's say Chaplain Jones has just administered the scale to her deploying unit and collected the results and entered them into a central spreadsheet. Because she knows the complications of collecting personally identifiable information along with those scale results, and because she's not yet established a secure and leadership-approved data management plan that can ease those complications, she simply enters the scores without any name or demographic information. Are those results now unusable for later comparison? Not by any means. When the unit returns, she can absolutely find the right time to administer a post-deployment SFS and examine the results. Her spreadsheet program, most likely it will be Microsoft Excel, can most likely help with this by allowing her to create visualization tools to notice significant group changes. She might ask a peer professional in the unit or on her installation to help her analyze her data. If you have a moment, you can find an introductory resource in Section 5 of your resource book on spreadsheets and visualization related to the SFS. Even if there's a slight difference, plus or minus 5%, let's say, in the exact same number of people who took the SFS before and after, there will likely be plenty of information in the change scores, that is, the differences recorded in before and after scaling, for Chaplain Jones to consider, as she makes her spiritual fitness programming plans for the upcoming months. If she keeps her eyes open to trends in unit morale and family cohesion, she may be able to develop hunches about the spiritual dimensions related to these trends, which she can roll into disciplined advisement with key leaders. That's all we have time for just now. I hope you're beginning to get the sense of how the SFS can be used with both individuals and groups. See you next time.